Thank you. While people are putting their responses in the chat, I'll get us started. Hello and welcome. My name is Lindsay Devine, and I am Senior Director of Learning Resources and Products at UAGC. And I will be the host of this session. What's my line again? How we can apply a simple acting technique to increase belonging. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. We've also enabled live transcription. If you'd like to use it, you can click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now I'm pleased to introduce you to Eric Piepenbrink. Eric is a retired professional actor, retired because he is no longer acting, professional because he was paid for his acting talents one time. After moving on from that dream, Eric has served the UAGC family of institutions since 2005. He is currently the VP of Student Services and previously also served as an adjunct faculty member. Eric's hope today is that we will be able to connect the dots between two things that may not have an obvious correlation. So Eric, take it away.
Thank you, Lindsay. So the last musical that I saw was Funny Girl, which was a revival on Broadway, I don't know, 2 years ago, and just recently came through Phoenix. So now I launched this conversation with a chat, and Lindsay encouraged you to certainly use the chat, but I will probably not be very closely keeping my eyes on the chat. If there is anything worth addressing near the end, I'll certainly look through the chat at that time. But I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I love to consider the question of what does one thing teach us about another, especially when those things don't necessarily seem to make sense together. And I think today we're going to complete one such equation. So as we get started, I would like to introduce you to three very accomplished actors. I will let you decide if they are famous actors or not, based on whether or not you've ever heard of them. So this is Marlene Danielle. Now we have two photos of her here. One is a little bit older and one is a little bit younger. And the reason for that will be obvious in a moment. But if you've ever seen Marlene Danielle, there's actually a good chance that she looked a little different, because this is also Marlene Danielle, but she was in costume as Demeter from Andrew Lloyd Webber's hit musical Cats. Cats ran on Broadway for 18 years, from 1982 until 2000, and Marlene Danielle appeared in the show for its entire run. She began her run performing at the 1983 Tony Awards as Demeter, and she took over that role full-time later in that same year. And then later, she took on the role of Bombalurina in 1984, and she remained in that role until the show closed in 2000. So as much as I'd like to talk about Marlene, research does show that discussing our feline friends is the fastest way to lose 62% of an audience. But fun fact, I know I can regain some of this audience by informing all of the Swifties out there that Taylor Swift also played Bombalurina. She did so in the very maligned 2019 movie version of this show. And if you haven't seen that movie, well, that's your choice. This is George Lee Andrews. If I told you that the character that George primarily played on Broadway was Monsieur Andre, could you tell me what show he was in? George was an original Broadway cast member of Phantom of the Opera, also an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. He played Monsieur Andre, one of the two opera house managers, for 13 years. When the producers wanted some new blood in that role, he stepped right next door and played Monsieur Fermin, the other house manager, for the next 10 years. He remained in the cast for 23 years, and he achieved a current Broadway record of 9,382 performances. Another fun fact, after those 23 years, when it was time for new blood again, George's run ended, but the producers gave the role to his son-in-law, Aaron. Please welcome to the stage Mr. William Gillette. Gillette had quite a career of his own, but he is most well known for bringing Sherlock Holmes to life on the stage in 1899. This movie poster here is from a portrayal in 1916. Gillette is credited by many sources as giving Sherlock Holmes his famous curved pipe, although there were some illustrations in the original Sir Arthur Conan Doyle books that depicted Holmes with a pipe. He is also credited with giving him his famous cap. Gillette played Holmes over 1,300 times. One more fun fact to stay on brand: if you'd like to get to know William Gillette a little, know that he built himself a castle, and that castle is now a state park that you can visit in Connecticut. So what do these three have in common? Stick-to-itiveness, longevity, repetition. Like if you think Tom Cruise has made a lot of Mission Impossible movies, this can give you some new perspective. This is 60 plus years worth of 3 actors playing 5 characters. And that is what brings us to the important technique used by actors, referenced in the name of today's presentation. The primary reason I highlighted Gillette here is that he is credited in 1913 with bringing to life the moniker of the illusion of the first time. This is seemingly simple, yet it is a profoundly important technique in the world of acting. It's difficult to do, but when it's done well, as one piece of everyone involved in a production doing their jobs well, it can create a moving, often emotional experience for an audience member lucky enough to be present that night. Don't take my word for it. Here's what Gillette stated in his original efforts to describe the illusion. Actors must search for and find words by which to express their character's thoughts. Even though these words are already known to the actor, they are not known to the character. He said the goal of the actor's work is to make every audience feel that it is witnessing not one of 1,000 weary repetitions, but a life episode that is being lived just across the magic barrier of the footlights. That is to say, the performance must have that indescribable life spirit or effect which produces the illusion of happening for the first time. Now, I like to take 2 different practical applications of the illusion of the first time. One is the formal application of it that happens on stage, that what happens on stage is the first time a character is experiencing something, even though it's not the first time an actor is experiencing it. Every time an actor gets in front of an audience, they owe it to that audience to give their best, most focused, in the moment performance. The words were written by the playwright. The blocking, or where to stand and when to walk where, was determined by the director. The actor must take all of that, and even though they may have rehearsed hundreds of times, make it seem like it's happening to and around their character right now for the very first time ever. Many people are impressed by an actor's ability to memorize lines. My college theater professor, Ned Sisney, loved to say that memorizing lines is just the homework of acting. Second application is that this is probably the first time at least one audience member has seen the show. Now, I have no way of proving what I'm about to say, but I'm willing to go out on a limb. At every single one of the live performances of our 3 examples, there was at least one person that had never seen that show before. The characters' reactions can never appear rehearsed or learned. Now, I've been lucky enough to have seen Phantom 3 times. The first time, I was in high school. The second time, I took my parents. It was their first time. My third time was the first one in New York on Broadway, and I took my 2 not quite teenage daughters for their first time to see the show. Our friend George from Phantom said he constantly worked on different elements of his performance as a way to keep things fresh. Some nights he focused on his breathing, other times it was the comedy and the nuance of the show. He knew that he owed it to every audience to be present, listening intently for his cues that he knew were coming, but his character would hear for the first time and then react accordingly. Okay, Eric, I get it, but I'm very unlikely to be a star on Broadway. What does this have to do with the whole reason we're here today, which is belonging? Let's do some basic math. Let's say you've taught at this institution for 6 years. The average number of courses taken per year is about 7. And the average students per course certainly varies by what you're teaching, but we can safely say 23 students per class. Now, hopefully, there have been at least some minor revisions in that time, but let's say for the sake of argument that there have not. So 6 times 7 times 23. Congratulations, instructors, you are now almost William Gillette. He played Sherlock Holmes about 1,300 times. You have read answers to this fairly basic assignment prompt 966 times. You probably have a way to go before becoming George Lee Andrews at 9,000 plus, but maybe there's someone in the audience today that could make that claim. Congratulations to our advisors. You have discussed a death in a student's family seemingly as many times as Marlene Danielle sang the Gumby Cat. Congratulations, leaders. Your newest team member is struggling to understand their part in a process that must be done correctly again. Belonging is at its core connectedness. It is an opportunity to feel like I can be successful here. Instructors, the only thing that matters is this student's current experience. This student, the one whose paper or discussion you're grading right now. This student, the one who has shown you over the last 4 weeks that they don't seem to take this class very seriously. This student's current experience here in week 5, when it's all you can do to avoid saying, I've told you this 6 times already. If memorizing lines is the mere homework of acting, is it fair to say that knowing the correct answer and understanding the material quite well is just the homework of teaching? How things are communicated is what will make or break the student's experience of learning and belonging. Advisors, there are a lot of similar stories out there, but each one that comes across your plate is likely the first time this student has ever experienced it, and they deserve your full empathy, your full attention, and your ability to walk them through the situation with no judgment and no preconceived notions. Perhaps the options you have to provide don't change much, but don't assume how this student will react to them. Leaders, we have all heard the expression, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. While that is technically and mathematically true, leaders need to turn that phrase 180 degrees and note that you have a choice. You have countless opportunities to give someone else the chance to make a first impression on you. With a brand new team member, you tend to give a lot of grace when they're learning. But how do you approach a situation with this team member who you believe should know better by now? Let's take a few easy looks at some techniques you can remember that will allow you to create a sense of belonging for those around you. They may be your students, your peers, team members, your friends. Hume Cronyn once said, the most magical moment in the theater is a silence so complete that you can't even hear people breathe. It means that you've got them. I've been lucky enough to be an audience member at several productions in my day where I don't even realize I haven't been breathing for a while and have to consciously choose to do so. As an audience member, that is powerful. You're so connected to the moment that you literally forgot to breathe. Maybe silence isn't the goal in a classroom, and it certainly is hard to gauge the depth of a connection in an online asynchronous environment, but an instructor who could pick out a cry for help or read between the lines of what a student writes and takes the opportunity to help them with what they're not saying will surely feel that impact in the response they receive. Within the advising teams that I'm blessed to lead, we have a few different mantras to live by. One of them is my best every student, every time. I alluded to this earlier, but advising has heard all the things. Death in the family, kids are sick, busy at work, I need a vacation. The important thing to remember is that it is likely the first time for this student. Even if it isn't, they deserve for us to treat it as such every time. Academic advisors are not trained therapists, but when a student opens up to us about what's going on in their life, taking an approach of empathy and understanding how school can or cannot fit into that situation is a key piece of what they are trained to do. Advisors must be present in the moment, listening intently for what the student will bring next to the table, not thinking about how they have solved the same problem for countless other students in the past. Every time an advisor gets on the phone with a student, they owe it to that student to give their best, most focused, in the moment connection and advisement. Active, empathic listening is just the homework of advising. It is important to have a strategy, and it does take a team. In the theater, without the tech crew, an actor is nothing more than a naked person standing on stage in the dark, saying lines that no one can hear. In the classroom, the faculty-student relationship is built in. There's only one instructor, and every student knows they need to learn and then work within the parameters of that instructor's style, expectations, ability to build relationships. How can you, as an instructor, use that connection to each student to help them connect with each other? One of the easiest ways to do this in a discussion forum is to allude to one student's post when referring to another. If you are required to reply to 6 students in each discussion, do you only read 6 posts and reply to them? Or do you read them all as they're posted and determine your best strategy for choosing who to reply to? As an instructor, you're eventually going to read every word that is written. Why not do so during the discussion phase of the course instead of just the grading phase of the course? This will allow you to help students connect to each other's commentary and realize that they either are or are not alone in their thoughts on the subject, but also realize they are certainly not alone in learning. Do you have a document like this? I'll print on purpose here, but this is a list of generic responses that are applicable to the most common themes of what students write on that subject, which you have seen 1,000 times. Do you have one of these for every discussion and every assignment in every course you teach? I would argue that this kind of document is okay as a foundation, but any of the statements within it need to be adapted to make sense for the student at hand. I promise students that are connected to each other are sharing what kind of feedback they got on their last assignment. And if it rings virtually the same or is exactly the same, they will quickly lose interest in what you have to say and feel like you're not making the effort to connect with their learning and help them belong in this higher ed environment. I learned this very quickly in one of my first courses I ever taught. There were several students who worked at the same company in my class, and as I was giving feedback, admittedly somewhat generic feedback, I caught myself thinking, wait, was this one of the students that worked at the same company as these other 2? Did I differentiate my feedback well enough, assuming that these 3 students will very likely be talking to each other? One time of worrying about that was enough, and I learned that if I was truly engaged with their work and what I recalled about their work earlier in the course, I didn't have to worry about that because the feedback was personal. If students choose to share their feedback with peers, it should be from an angle of this professor really paid attention to what I wrote. Before we go, I'd like to introduce you to one more individual from theater history. While you may not have heard of our first 3 actors today, it goes without saying that this guy is famous. Quite possibly the most famous individual in the history of the theater, William Shakespeare. Now, it's not fair to try to choose which of Shakespeare's plays is the best or even the most popular, But there is one line he wrote that probably stands above the rest. To be or not to be, that is the question. Today, I choose to be. To create belonging, be present, be tactical, be personal. Rely on these three approaches to ensure you create an environment of belonging anywhere you go and in any role you hold. Ask yourself how you need to utilize the illusion of the first time in your daily interactions. Now, in closing, I'll have you know that today was quite literally the first time I've shared these thoughts publicly. But next time I share them, I'll be sure to treat that audience with the respect they deserve and do so with the illusion of the first time. So we have just a couple minutes left. I'd be happy to read through the chat if there is anything, but I would love to hear anyone's thoughts on how you practice the approaches that we've discussed today as well. All right. Well, seeing none.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you including leadership in your conversation. I think that I certainly try to, but can strive harder to approach problems that maybe I've solved over, the tenure in the position many, many times, training new team members as if it's the first time, walking them through it, having that patience with them, as they don't know the script, right? They don't know what the solution is. So thank you for applying it to leadership. Um, you have a comment in the chat. Thank you, Joy, for sharing that you try to provide personal feedback and connect with students on a more personal level. I'm just sitting over here smiling. This was a great presentation, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. To your point on leadership, the hardest part isn't teaching a new person what the right answer is. It's teaching the person you've already taught the right answer 12 times and they aren't figuring it out yet. Like, how do you maintain your patience and ensure that you act as if like they deserve for you to treat it as the first time you've ever encountered it, especially with them, just because maybe saying it a slightly different way will be what gets through to them.
Mm-hmm. Connie, thank you for sharing that you try to absolutely become that student with every engagement, whether that's responding or grading, and approaching your communication with that individual's needs and wants in mind. Nicole mentions that presence to me means focusing not just on the content of the message, but how my message impacts someone. And we are just about at time. So just wanted to say thank you, Eric, and thank you to the audience for your participation in today's session. Please use the survey linked in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards and share your feedback on your experience. Thanks again, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of TLC.